I'm going to open the meeting with a moment of silent meditation and prayer, and then pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Paizo, are there any changes to the agenda this evening?
Just one that I'm aware of, Mr. Polari. Item number 6 on this evening's agenda, which is application for preliminary and final land development for BSV Housing, the Bensalem Veteran Residences. We received correspondence from the applicant after the agendas went out asking that the item be tabled as they are scheduled to go in front of the zoning hearing board for a variance issue that has arisen on the application. Therefore, to afford them time to go to the zoning hearing board, it would probably be best to table the item forward to a date certain. Let's see, we're in mid-May, perhaps for your second meeting in June?
How about the first meeting in July?
I'm sure they won't protest if it's the first meeting in July.
Do we have a motion on the floor?
I'll make the motion. We table number 6 until the first meeting in July. I don't have that date.
July 11th.
What is-
7/11.
Oh, July 11th. Okay.
I'll second the motion.
Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it, 5-0. Anything else, Mr. Paizo?
That's all I'm aware of, sir.
Number 2 on the agenda, public comment on any agenda item. Do we have anyone who wants to come forward? Seeing none. Number 3 on the agenda, approval of council minutes for the meeting date April 23rd, 2018. Do we have any additions or corrections? If not, the motion would be in order.
Mr. Polari, I had just one change that I've already shared with the with Mr. Leckie, but I wanted to bring to council's attention. At the top of page 4, in regard to the conditional use application for Holistic Pharma, as council will recall, the applicant had agreed that their application would be limited to strictly to the medical marijuana use, and that any other proposed future use would require them to come back to council for further conditional use approval. I wanted to make that as clear as possible, and so in that last sentence, which begins with Nace said her client will agree to accept use for medical marijuana, et cetera, I've asked Mr. Leckie to change that so that it now reads as follows. Nace said her client will agree to accept the condition that the use is limited only to medical marijuana, and that the applicant will come before council for any other proposed future use. Period.
Not a motion would be in order.
I'll make the motion that we approve the minutes for the Monday, April 23rd meeting with the changes Mr. Paizo had noted under number 4 in the last paragraph as stated.
Okay, do we have a second on the motion?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
But aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it, 5-0. Number 4 on the agenda, Mr. Ted Dorand, External Affairs Manager, Bucks County, for PECO, will speak on the current project in the township. Sir?
Mr. President, Mr. Mayor, members of council, I appreciate the opportunity to come before you this evening to give you a brief update on the project that we've been continuing to work on in the Valley area in Neshaminy in the township. And this project is part of an overall effort on the part of PECO to spend upwards of $250 million on infrastructure improvements throughout our PECO service territory. We began that effort in 2015, and that will proceed out to 2020. And as part of that project, we identified the area in the Neshaminy Valley where there was a significant amount of aged underground cable and aging transformers in that area. Sure, I don't have to tell you folks that in those areas, they began developing in the mid-60s, some of them a little bit later, and have continued to develop. And that means that we have electric cable that's been in the ground for close to 50 years, and transformers as well. And during the course of the last few years, we've been monitoring electric reliability in that area and found that electric reliability was less than what we wanted it to be and less than it should be for customers. Customers were experiencing outages on sunny days like today, and we did not feel that we were living up to the standards that we wanted for reliability in that area. So we began work on designing projects associated with the replacement of underground cable and electric transformers in that area. And we actually have a total of 18 projects that we are considering and working forward on. We began the work in 2016, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, and up through the end of this year, we will actually be completing 14 projects. Rather than do everything at one time, which would have been, we believe, very unmanageable for not only the customers, but for the township and ourselves, we decided to carve up the work into individual projects. So in 2016, we began the work, and up through the end of this year, we will complete 14 projects, and in so doing, replace about 178,000 lineal feet of underground electric cable, and we will replace 192 transformers. And up through the end of this year, that will be a spend of more than $8.5 million to improve the electric reliability in that area of the township. And we've actually completed 9 of those projects so far. We have 5 that are actively working now, which we will complete. 2 of those 5 we expect to complete by the end of July, and the remaining 3 should be complete by the end of October or November, so long as we have reasonably good weather to work under. And then in 2019, we'll have 4 projects which we'll close out with. And in those 4 projects, we would expect to replace about 37,000 lineal feet of electric cable. And that is all worth about $3.5 million. I don't have a total count on the number of transformers that we will replace in 2019 because we're still designing that work. But in the end, when we're all finished at the end of 2019, be a total value of over $12 million of spend to improve the reliability in that area. And we know that it has been an inconvenience to customers in those areas where it is a construction project. A couple of things that we're doing to try to alleviate the work and the amount of construction that's going on is that we're doing a lot of what we call directional boring, which enables us to bore in the lawns behind the sidewalks for the most part, or between the sidewalk and the curb to replace the cable. I would also tell you that there is a change because back in the late 60s and early 70s, the transformers that we use, which basically transform or step down the voltage that's in the lines to make it compatible to power appliances in individual customers' homes. That's what we mean by a transformer. Those transformers in those areas were placed underground. There was a circular tube with a grate on it, and the transformer was placed in the ground. Over the course of time, those transformers have been shown to be unreliable. We have more problems with what we call a submersible transformer than not. So a submersible transformer is no longer the standard transformer that PECO uses for underground projects. We use a pad-mounted transformer, which roughly has the dimension of maybe 4 by 5 or 4 by 6 feet. It stands about 40 inches tall. And in the areas where we had the underground transformer, we're taking that old transformer out of the ground. We're removing the tube, so to speak, that it was in, the galvanized metal and grate. We're filling it in and seating it, and then we find a place for the transformer. Now, in certain locations, it can be challenging because of small lot sizes and other constraints to site those above-ground transformers. And we have been doing our best to site those transformers in ways that don't impact the homeowners. But many homeowners do have small yards, and we recognize that. And there are times when we don't have many options because it's very prescriptive how far apart those transformers are in the design of the system. So we meet one-on-one with customers, try to work through the issues with them as best we can. I will tell you that prior to entering an area, we sent a letter out to every customer so they knew that the work was coming. They knew a little bit about the work, a general description about the work, and they were given contact information for them to reach out to us in the event that they had concerns or questions, and many of them did. And in the course of executing the work, we've had more conversations with customers and trying to work our way through it. It was very challenging this winter. As you know, we had an extended winter, and it pushed back the amount of permanent restoration that we could get engaged in prior to the end of March. And that's when the weather really broke. So from, let's say, October, November, we couldn't final grade because we couldn't put down any seed. The grass wouldn't take. The asphalt plants stopped making asphalt. Concrete plants stopped making concrete. So we had to do some what we call temporary restoration in those areas. And now we're out in the areas where we have completed the work doing permanent restoration. And during the course of time, we have had concerns that have been raised up to us, either through the mayor's office or through Mr. Samori's office. And when we get those concerns expressed to us, I basically am in charge of getting them tracked down and worked. And we try to work out a solution that may not be necessarily perfect, but one that certainly we hope we're able to reach some agreement with customers. From the standpoint of restoration and concrete work and those types of things, that's a non-starter. Anything that we disturb, we're going to fix. Anything that people feel we haven't addressed adequately, we will come back and do. So that type of work, in the end, everyone will be satisfied, with that type of restoration that we're doing. We're trying to be responsible. We're trying to be a good neighbor, so to speak. It's difficult work. It's unusual work because it's not the normal maintenance that we do. You may see us out there from time to time doing individual things in the air or on a customer's property. But this is, an infrastructure project that we hope and we expect will bring long-term relief for the next 20 years once we're done. We would expect customers to get good reliability from the work that we're doing. And I'll say one last thing, and that is that we appreciate very much the cooperation of the township in this effort. We know that we've had conversations with Public Works, we've had conversations with the mayor's office, we've had conversations with Mr. Samori, and we worked through the issues. We tried to take into account all of the paving that the township is engaged in. We certainly don't want to be in a position where we have to do a trench in a road and then it's a road that you just paved. So those types of things we're trying to coordinate and deal with as we go.
Yeah, I've got a few questions. Who is performing the work? Is that PECO, or are you contracting that work?
We have subcontractors. They are what we call contractors of record. They are fully vetted contractors, different ones. There's a contractor out there now by the name of Miller Brothers. There's another which is Henkels and McCoy. Those contractors are fully vetted, fully bonded. We have watched their work over the course of time, and we have confidence that they will do a good job for us. Not to say that everything is perfect, but they are fully vetted, fully insured, and fully supervised. We have PECO people in the field every day just monitoring the situation. We actually have our own project management team engaged as well. And I have a project manager out there who may not be on the site every day, but is out there and fully engaged to resolve any issues.
Okay, so how many subcontractors are working on this project?
At the moment, I believe that there are only two. There may be a third. The third I'll get for you. I'll get those and I can provide them to Mr. Samori.
Now, do these subcontracts have scheduled completion dates?
They have, yes, they work according to a schedule, an overall schedule for completion of the work that's laid out from the beginning. So the jobs are scoped out and they have an understanding. Now, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago,
There's delays due to late weather.
Delays due to weather, but we have a very rigid schedule. We call it an in-service date when we expect the projects to be completed and the work to be buttoned up.
Now, prior to this, the delayed winter, what was that scheduled in-service date?
Well, as I mentioned, the projects that we have out there working now, most of them have either 9/30/18 scheduled completion dates or 10/31/18 scheduled dates. There are a couple that one or two that we would expect to get done at the end of June. But for the most part, those that are actively being worked right now have those dates. And there's a process here that is engaged. The first process is we have to do what we call the construction work, which is pulling the cable, installing the transformers. And then there's the electrical part, which entails taking customers in sections and taking them from the old line and putting them on the new line. And that has to be scheduled and coordinated with our operations department so that we're not putting any other circuits or customers at risk while we do that work. And there are times when the cutover, as we call it, gets delayed a day or two or a week, depending upon what else is going on. But that's generally how it works.
Okay, so with the winter, I understand you're running behind.
Yeah.
So are those 9/30 and 10/31 dates going to be pushed back?
They shouldn't be. They
Okay.
should not be. We should be able to complete. Based on the weather that we're currently experiencing, we should have those complete.
Okay. You mentioned that you've meeting one-on-one with some of the residents.
Right.
What are you doing to assure them that the condition of their properties, when the project's done, is going to be acceptable to them?
Well, in the cases where we're working, there are many opportunities for customers to interact with us, and they've been doing that. They're not bashful about coming out of their homes and talking to us about how things are going, whether they're not going well or whether they are going well. So we have tried to assure them every time we have a communication with them that we will leave it right in the end. The grass will be, the soil will be there, topsoil will be there, they'll be seeded, there'll be straw down, sidewalk blocks that we break or have to dig up will be replaced, pieces of curbing, that type of thing. That's different, though, I must say, than a situation where we have 1 or 2 sidewalk blocks that we actively worked, and a customer has 10 or 12, and they want us to put in a whole new sidewalk. We cannot do that. We replace what we damage, and we replace what we crack or have to break up as a result of the work that we do.
I understand. The submersible transformers that you're replacing, sounds like they've lasted 50, some closer to 60 years.
Right.
What's the longevity of the new transformers?
They should have, with good operating, with continued maintenance, they should be a 70-year type transformer.
70 years. Okay.
There's a lot of difference in the way you maintain them. The submersible transformers, because they were underground, they're subject to water lying in them. And also, believe it or not, road salt gets into those transformers and underground cable. I'm not casting dispersions on any communications company, but as underground communications wire is put in the ground, sometimes our cables get nicked. They don't go out, they just get nicked over time. Moisture gets into those cables and ultimately they fault. So this is meant to clean all that up.
Okay. You mentioned next year you've got 4 more projects.
Yes, sir.
Where in the township will they be located?
Generally speaking, they'll be in the area of Country Village, Woodbridge, Bensalem Village, and an area called, in the area of Washington. And they're names that we put on these projects. I can certainly provide some streets associated with where those are.
I appreciate that.
To some degree, as I mentioned earlier, we're not fully designed yet.
Okay.
So I don't have the 100% information on all the streets, but by the time they're ready to go, we'll have all those streets. We'll be communicating to the customers, and then I'm always sending a letter ahead of time. It's an actual copy of the letter that we send to the customers. I send to the township, so they're aware of what we're doing and where we're doing it.
When
Okay.
you send that out, can you also send it to council? The council line?
Yes.
Thank you. How, those 4 projects, when are you planning to start those? Is that in the spring, as soon as the winter's period is over?
They most likely will be designed by the end of the year,
Okay.
this year, and there's a likelihood that they could start in January or February, depending upon the weather. And we'll evaluate that and try to be mindful of the amount of disruption that occurs during the winter.
Understand.
And try to balance that out. But we also have an objective, which is to improve the reliability.
Oh, of course.
And the sooner that we can get in there and get out, the better, I think, for everybody.
And then when would you plan on finishing that phase of the project, those 4 projects for next year?
They would probably be finished by the end of next year.
By the end of 2019?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a possibility that we could get them done sooner, depending how quickly and what kind of conditions we encounter.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't had a lot of rock in the township thus far, but there's always that possibility in an area that we would have some rock, and that would slow us down a little bit.
Okay. I think that's all my questions.
Anybody else have any questions?
I have some.
You're welcome.
So, Mr. Dorand, thank you very much for coming out this evening. I certainly appreciate your time and providing that presentation. I do have several questions for you.
Sure.
Can we start with the design work? And I think that was kind of what we started with when this whole project started, and we're talking about these boxes that are put out in these people's yards, and obviously that's a concern.
Right.
Is there anything that you have thought about and considered based off of the complaints that you're getting related to the size of these boxes and what some people call as eyesores?
Right.
And is there something that maybe you could consider with the design work for the 4 additional projects that maybe you could try to alleviate that concern?
So in terms of where they're located, as I mentioned earlier, at times there are very few choices. It's based on linear distances and the electric carrying capacity of the cable. They have to be placed at certain locations. So there may be an opportunity to adjust some of that, and we'll certainly give consideration to that. The second thing that I would say to you is that a lesson learned for us is that we need to have more communication up front with the customers when we begin to do the work. The customers get the letters, but then it can be several months before we actually begin the work. So we're designing some communications that will let the customers know a little bit sooner that the work is coming and give them an opportunity to ask questions about it. We actually have a door hanger that we will use that will give customers some information about the projects, why we're doing them, again, to reinforce the message, and then information about how they can reach the individuals that are actually working on the design for the project. It's a little late in the game when you spray the square on the lawn. Mm-hmm. And we want to have some opportunity for customers to ask questions before that happens. So we're going to back up a bit and try to reinforce the conversations.
Great. I'm glad you had made that point. That was another item that I had.
Yeah.
That was some of the feedback that I know I had received as far as how do we reach out. They've gotten this letter months ago, and some people just threw it away. Right. And then it was, they're starting this work. Who do I reach out to then? So,
absolutely. Yeah, and understandably so.
Can I? So let's talk about the. I guess the cleanup and the remediation of some of the property. Mm-hmm. And I've been out there several times myself. Okay. And I guess just to have an understanding, and you had noted it's not perfect, but I guess I want to have an understanding as far as how close to perfect are we getting it?
Well, we're going to get it very close. And when I talked about it's not perfect, I meant that there are times when you're working, we have expectations that generally speaking, sites will be swept up as best they can at the end of each day, that when we're placing stone at a location or equipment at a location, we're not taking up parking spaces in a tight area. We're not putting porta potties and courts in front of people's homes. We're trying to be more mindful of the impact of that work. And then now we're in a situation where we have good weather that's going to last us through October into the end of October, where we'll be able to follow behind much more quickly with the permanent restoration that we're doing. We're also entering into a phase where there'll be more directional boring that's done, so that should mean that should be less disruption, to lawns in a lot of places, and less disruption to sidewalk areas and curb areas.
So being that you brought the directional boring up, if there's a box on the grass, what would be, and you're talking about that would avoid the fact that they would have to rip up the sidewalk, is that correct?
No. So what happens is, and every site is different, every address is different, but we would run the cable to the point where there was the submersible, what I'll call the submersible transformer in the ground. And then at the appropriate time in the construction process, the submersible tube is removed after we cut the customer over. So we have to run the cable, we have to place the transformers down, make the connections, and then cut the customers over to the new cable and the new transformer. Then we come back and do the final stage, which is take this tube transformer out of the ground, the tube itself, the grate, fill it up with topsoil, grade it out, seed it, and so forth.
Okay. So just real quick with the restoration of some of the property. So when I was over there, do you find it acceptable that there was heavy construction equipment that was driving on residents' lawns?
Well, we have to have the ability to do the work that we're doing. So when we do the directional bore, it takes equipment to do that. Now, the equipment is rated such that it should not do any harm to any underground utilities. It may leave ruts and that type of thing.
Yep.
And in those cases, we will be back to fix those areas.
So in that event, then, if there was straw that was laid down or hay as well as seed, then are you going to go back then and cover those ruts?
We'll
Because
come back out. We'll come back out. So if we have a situation where we did the work and now there are ruts there, and maybe it had seed and straw under it, okay, and we had the ruts, we'll be back to grade those areas out where the ruts were, re-seed and re-straw.
Okay.
To make it the way it was.
Yep.
When we encountered it.
Yep. You have to recognize, and you noted already earlier, that these lawns are smaller, and a lot of these residents take pride in the way that this looks.
Absolutely.
So it's important that we get it to as close as perfect as possible.
And we have a commitment to do that. We'll make the commitment to do that.
On that note, then, the contact information, I think, would be important to get back out there in case they do have concerns. If there are residents out there that do want to reach out and contact PECO, do you have a dedicated line or some contact information that they can reach to?
There is a telephone number that's tied to a person along with an email address for that person. And I can provide that to the township. After the meeting tonight, I can send an email tomorrow morning. But all customers have received that name and telephone number.
Understood, but when?
When what?
When did they get that information?
Many of them got it some months ago, no question.
Yeah, okay.
And since then, I can tell you that in situations where they've brought these issues to our attention, they know the individuals to contact and have been provided telephone numbers. Now, in the event they haven't, then we'll need to know about that so that we can circle back. Again, that's part of, we're not in a perfect world here, and I'm not going to say that everybody that's out there, is doing everything they can, but we're out there watching them to make sure that they're getting it.
And I'm glad you brought that point up, because you did note that the project manager is not there daily. How often is the project manager on site?
The project manager is on site in the area. He may be in different parts because, as I mentioned, we have a number of projects going, but there is always a project person on site in the general area every day that construction is going on.
So there's a PECO representative on site within Bensalem somewhere every day.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And for issues that need to be raised up, I've made myself available, and I can be the funnel for getting these taken care of. The last thing that we want is to have a customer, be unhappy with what's going on out there. So we're going to try to do our best to make them happy.
Okay. And then one final question. After the work is completed, does PECO go around and review the work, make sure that it's satisfactory prior to releasing that contractor?
Absolutely. There's a complete site walk down of the project areas, and they're reviewed. In a couple of cases, we've been in apartment complexes, and we have a site walk down with the management company representative of those apartment complexes to make sure that we've done it the way they want it to be done.
And are you catching anything that needs repair and going back to the contractor?
Occasionally we do, yes.
How often?
Probably once or so a week, we'll find something. I mean, in certain areas, we have had concerns about the quality of the restoration that was done. There's a couple of apartment complexes where concerns were raised up, and we're now back out there. Contractors actually have been out there the last couple of weeks working on those.
Gotcha.
They
Okay.
were raised up to us, and we went out, did a walk down of everything. We also then walked it down with the contractor that was involved, created a punch list of items that needed to be corrected, and now they're going through the process of ticking those punch list items off one at a time. And then at the end, we'll walk back through and make sure that everything's done.
Thank you. And one other, just with the sidewalk, since you brought it up. I think a reason why the resident was looking to have it completely replaced was because the color is not matching. I'm sure
Understood.
you've heard that concern already.
Absolutely.
Is there anything that we could possibly do?
There
resolve it.
really isn't anything that we can do about that. I will tell you from my own experience what I observed when I had to take a block of my sidewalk out to do a water line repair. I built my house in '85. I had my water line, my sidewalks were kind of weathered, as you would expect over time.
Yep.
And then the water company came in, corrected my line that I had, and gave me one block. And that one block is white.
Yep.
And the others are a little bit weathered because of weather and age and so forth.
Yep.
But you know what? I'm 2 years in, and that sidewalk block looks like pretty much the rest of them. So it is something that I know isn't satisfying to a customer, but we're not permitted to replace sidewalks in totality for areas that we didn't disturb.
I understand. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Knowles?
Yeah, a quick question. I just wanted to emphasize, because sometimes when you hear about subcontractors, you used to cable companies that hire these individual people with pickup trucks, and they're climbing on your house. They're climbing on your house and such. The Miller Company and Haskell, you said, is the other?
Henkel's and McCall.
Okay, they're very large.
Very large.
And I'm sure they enjoy doing business with PECO.
No doubt about
Okay,
it.
so if someone was to complain to the mayor's office, and the mayor's office complained to you, PECO, you have control over these companies to make them do what at least you want them to do
Absolutely.
and try to
Wouldn't it?
satisfy. So they're not rogue
They're not rogue.
subcontractors.
They've been doing work for us in one form or another for many years, first of all, and you have to do that before you become a contractor of choice with PECO.
Yeah, they're very big companies.
And they're very large, and they have many crews and resources, and that's why we hire them. We also hire them because they do good work. And if they don't do good work, then they understand that they're going to be accountable for making it right.
And if someone didn't have the phone number that they got sent, and you said you're going to improve that in the future, that got sent a couple months ago, they could always contact the mayor's office, who could contact you directly, and then you could reach the resident, right?
Absolutely, either through the mayor's office, Mr. Samori's office,
Public Works.
whatever the case may be. I get an email about an issue, I direct it right to the field, right then and there, to get addressed.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for coming out.
Mr. Mayor, you have something?
Yeah, having worked on this project with him, we've gotten 52 telephone inquiries and 27 emails since it started. And I've asked PECO to come on TV and give an update all the time what's going on. I think that's a good idea to do. Ted, I've asked you before.
Right.
This way the people will know what's going on. They go on the TV and they know where you're going and what's happening. I think that communication is important. I think you take a second look at that.
Okay.
But every call that we get absolutely goes over to PECO, and if Public Works gets them, it goes over there. We keep a log of everything that comes in, and I don't think we got any repeats after we got in touch with them, the people. I'm not exactly sure of that, but I'm almost positive of that. The biggest complaint that we get is the the new box, the new transformer. That's the
Correct.
biggest complaint that we get, and my God, we must have talked to you 1,000 times about that. But as soon as we get anything here at the township, we encourage people to call us if they can. And you know, we put letters out even from the township for the first section to say to call us if you're having a problem. But yeah, it's a major construction, and I know here at the township, we're committed to go stay on top of PECO to get it done.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Mr.
Thank you.
Polari, and just one other question for Mr.
Yes.
Dorand. The letter that went out to the residents of Neshaminy Boulevard, Gilbert Drive, Durham Place, Bogle, Claridge, and Shepherd gave a contact name for PECO of Randy Martin.
That's correct.
Would that individual still be the contact person?
That will be the initial contact.
Okay. So that telephone number for anyone watching at home is 215-956-3113. It's Randy, R-A-N-D-I, Martin. And the email address is randy, randy.martin@exeloncorp, EXELONCORP.com. And again, that's the name that's been in the letters that PECO has been providing to the residents as the projects have moved along. That's the individual that the township contacts, either Ms. Martin or Mr. Dorand.
And that'll be on the TV screen. We'll put that on there.
Thank you, Mr. Pizzo. Thank you, Mr. Dorand.
All right, once again, thank you very much for your time.
Okay, number 5 on the agenda, approval and signing of record plans for applicant Michael D. Cannon, location 4552 Laurence Court, duplex dwelling, zoning classification R3A, tax parcel 2-93-288. Mr. Gans.
Yes, this is the plans that you approved on March 26, 2018, regarding a minor subdivision. There were some dimensional corrections that were made in our memorandum on February 22nd, and they have been addressed. We recommend that council approve the signing of the record plans and sign them so that they may be recorded at the Bucks County Recorder.
Thank you, sir. We have a motion on the floor.
I'll make a motion that we reapprove and sign the record plan as presented.
Do we have a second on the motion?
Second motion.
Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it, 5-0. Number 7 on the agenda, consideration of resolution authorizing the upgrading of existing traffic signals for the pedestrian crossing installation at Bristol Road, past Cologne Boulevard, shopping center access. Who will be handling that one, Mr. Pizzo?
I'd be happy to. I think your description pretty much summarizes everything, Mr. Polari. The township is proposing an upgrade to the pedestrian crossing signal at Bristol Road and past Cologne Boulevard for access to the adjacent shopping center. The plan is to install new countdown timers and associated signing. In order to do that, since this is on a PennDOT highway and a PennDOT signal, it requires the township to submit an application to amend the existing permit for that signal. And in order to submit the application, the administration first needs a resolution of council authorizing that submission. The resolution is the standard resolution provided to us by PennDOT, and it is in a form acceptable for your consideration and approval.
Okay, do we have a motion on the floor?
I will put that in form of a motion as presented.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any questions on the motion?
Yeah, what's the cost of the traffic signal upgrade?
What's
Cost.
the cost?
I don't have that. I don't have that with me.
Is it included in this year's budget?
We don't pay for it.
They put it, PennDOT.
I would say it absolutely is.
PennDOT's paying for it?
PennDOT's
You just
paying
maintain it? Okay.
Yeah, the upgrade itself is PennDOT, and we maintain.
Perfect, okay.
Okay, do we have any other questions on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it, 5-0. Number 8 on the agenda, consideration of a resolution approving dedication of tax map parcel numbers 2-33-14, 2-37-63, 2-37-64, 65, 66, 67, 68-1, 2-3786, 2-32-8 to the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation.
Yes, before you this evening is a resolution that would approve the execution and recording of the various deeds of dedication attached thereto related to the various tax map parcels that you just described, Mr. Blair.
Thank you, sir.
The dedication, all of these deeds of dedication are related to the intersectional improvements that were performed by the township and PennDOT at the intersection of Mechanicsville Road and Bybury Road. As council will recall, that was a project that, in order to have placed on the tip, required the township to perform the right-of-way acquisition and the engineering. PennDOT in turn performed the construction work. As sort of the housekeeping end of that project, it now requires the township to dedicate over to PennDOT the right-of-way that the township initially acquired in order to do the intersectional improvements and widening. As council will also recall, this project, or at least the township's portion of it, was fully funded by Parks Casino as part of their commitment to traffic improvements to the various intersections adjacent to their property, and therefore no township funds were expended in terms of acquiring these rights-of-way or in the conveyance of them now to PennDOT, as the township will be reimbursed by Parks for any costs associated therewith. The deeds and the resolution are in a form acceptable for your consideration and approval at this time.
Do we have a motion on the floor?
I'll put that in motion.
Do we have a second on the motion?
I'll second the motion.
Any questions on the motion?
Who owns these properties for these tax map parcels?
Who owns the properties?
Who owned the properties for
All
the
of
tax?
We do.
the houses along the way there,
Is that all the residents along
the
the
residents, Parks had their own.
Parks have the one side,
The one side
and
and
the rest was the residents?
Bybury and Mechanicsville.
Yes,
So it's a mix.
it's a mix of the residential properties that front along Bybury and Mechanicsville, adjacent to that intersection, and on the other side, everything was owned pretty much entirely by Parks.
And some of them they had to take by eminent domain, right?
Yes.
Parks put up $2 million in escrow for that project.
Okay.
So we're taking it from,
There was not a dime come out of the town.
Pieces of the front of people's
Understood.
properties for
so then I'm
sidewalks.
assuming we're taking that from the escrow then? Well, what were the costs of the township?
All of the costs associated with this project that were
Parks.
townships were paid by Parks, yes.
Yeah, and it'll be reimbursed by Parks through the escrow?
If it hasn't already been. Again, the project's been done for a while, so the township's been reimbursed. This particular aspect of it.
Let me clarify that. We didn't get reimbursed. We had the escrow money to use, and it came out of the escrow. The money came out of the escrow. We had that money.
Direct.
We didn't put any money up.
Okay.
Was the bills had to be paid, it came out of Parks Casino escrow fund, which was $2 million that they put up before they ever started.
Do we have any other questions on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it, 5-0. Number 9 on the agenda, consideration of a resolution approving the filing of an application for funds under the Greenway Trails and Recreation Program.
Mr. Polari, the resolution that's before you is, again, you've pretty well described what it is, an application under the Greenways, Trails, and Recreation Program for the township to seek grant funds for the township's trails program. Mr. Belfield, who has spearheaded this project first as a member of first as a member of the Environmental Advisory Board, then as a member of council, and now again as a member of the Environmental Advisory Board, is present, and he can explain in greater detail and with greater knowledge than I as to the various moving parts of the grant application.
Mr. Belfield?
Good evening. Tony Belfield, 24/7 Report. The council members that were serving at the time may recall that this project was initially part of our Master Greenways and Trails Plan that was established many years ago. We were lucky enough last year to be able to make application to the County Open Space Board, and this council approved that application for funding for this project. And we did receive a grant in the amount of $137,000, round numbers, to fund this project. We now have the opportunity to go out for a state grant for additional matching funds of $56,000. What this project is, for those members of the board who were not present previously, is a trail running from Imagination Land Park right on Humeville Road back through the township property and connecting to the boardwalk behind the amphitheater. So that will give direct handicapped access between those 2 points, and additional point of access for the residents of the township to our central park for different events. This project does include the establishment of 2 ADA parking spaces along the trail alignment on the county library property. So again, direct access there. Also, during the time that we were developing Central Park and putting that boardwalk in behind the amphitheater, we had the foresight to put a boardwalk in to nowhere right now, but it does connect to the school district property that's immediately adjacent. That boardwalk is existing. This plan also includes for providing additional access through the school district property. So once again, the school district and that direction, you'll have public access to our Central Park, which is obviously the main central point for festivities here in the township. So with the application we put in, the project would be fully funded. There would be no township funds that would be using for this trail. It'd be a 10-foot wide crushed stone trail, which is the standard design for the state for trails of this nature. And again, the costs we're dealing with here are going to cover the costs of the necessary engineering and construction for those segments. There will be some additional work with the school district. Our ultimate goal, obviously, is to, once we have that connection, to expand it behind the schools and get as far as we can to create the greatest access. And that is all part of, as I say, was all planned and mapped out through the Greenway and Trails Master Plan for the township and our open space plan itself. So respectfully request council's review and consideration of this application. And hopefully, if successful, we would be looking to finalize engineering on this project this year and have it under construction next year. It's a fairly aggressive schedule, but as I say, a considerable amount of planning and activity has occurred over the last 5 to 10 years on multiple segments of trails throughout the township, but in this case, specifically this one.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Belfield?
To the $136,000, that's from the county, is that correct?
That's the County Open Space Program, yes, sir.
Any other questions for Mr. Belfield?
Yeah, you said it was a crushed stone trail that's going in.
Yes.
Is that ADA compliant? Because you mentioned that they were adding ADA parking spaces.
It is ADA compliant, similar to the trail system that was in our Central Park. So it's, when I say crushed stone, it's not like you expect with highway. It's
Yeah,
fine powdered dust
Okay.
that's crushed. And the reason we do that is for the environmental considerations. That's a pervious surface, so we deal with stormwater management and erosion and that. The
Okay.
water goes in the ground and helps keep it compacted.
Okay, thank you.
Tony, you also served on Bucks County Open Space, right, or something to
will-
that effect?
chairman of the county open space program, which terminated at the beginning of this year.
Okay, but that was part of the beginning planning of the whole trail system in Bucks County.
That was a 20-year program that addressed quite a bit of the trails.
Being a geologist, you know a lot about stone, I would assume.
Yes, sir. Not about the environment, too.
If there's not anyone else?
One more.
Yeah.
If we get if the grant's accepted from the state, when will they begin the project, you know?
As soon as we get the grant approval, we'll start the engineering process. Like I said, our goal, our timeframe is kind of condensed, but, we want to get it up and running as soon as possible, so we're looking at final engineering design, being able to go out to bid towards the end of this year, with
Okay.
construction to start in 2019. And as PECO said, that'll be subject to weather conditions and a host of other things that the administrative staff will be commenting on, I'm sure.
Do you have an estimate for how long the construction portion will take?
Construction should be fairly quickly. I would say you have probably a 3-month
Yeah,
start to finish, because again, one of the benefits, again, of using the crushed stone is it's much less intense, the construction process.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Belfield.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, sir.
Appreciate your time. Okay, so we have a resolution on the floor.
I'll make a motion that we approve the resolution approving the filing of the application for the funds under the Greenway Trail and Recreation Program as presented.
I'll second it.
Any questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it, 5-0. Number 10 on the agenda, consideration of escrow release for Somerton Valley Homes LP, Phase 1, release number 14, location Carter Road and Somerton Road, tax parcel 2-6-1, 2-7-2. Mr. Gaines?
Yes, this is for the Phase 1 portion of the project. They requested a release of $22,458.30. Because of some minor punch list items that have not been completed, we are recommending this not be released at this time.
Okay, so we don't have to vote on this, do we?
Well, so as to comport with the township's requirement to act upon the escrow release, I guess the appropriate action would be for the township to vote to accept the recommendation of the township engineer and not release any escrow at this time.
Thank you, sir.
Do we need this certificate of completion if we're not certifying that the project is complete?
Well, I think this certificate releases nothing, basically, so.
Right, so why do we even need it?
Well, I think we have to.
I wouldn't want to give a certificate of completion if it's not complete.
Well, part of the MPC requires that we take action every time they ask. And we would just send this to them indicating that nothing has been
That it would be
released.
0.
Right.
Okay.
About this
Okay,
document.
do we have a motion on the floor?
I'll make a motion that we decline the request for an escrow release on the advice of our engineer, Ron Gans.
Do we have a second on the motion?
I'll second that.
Any question on the motion?
Well, isn't the motion,
To decline.
but wouldn't the motion be to approve the presentation made to us? To decline?
That's what he proposed.
That's what I said.
I thought you said you declined it, okay.
Decline the request and accept the recommendation from the
The
engineer.
wording should be the effect that we actually approve the
Exactly.
recommendation.
Exactly right. That's what I
No,
thought.
but the things originally on here to approve it is the original request, but we're going to decline it.
Well, it's to approve the amount of 0 is what it is. That's what I read it. It's to approve the amount of 0.
We're arguing semantics.
Okay, if anybody can speak English better than me and wants to take over the...
Well, that's how I would put it on, to approve the motion as presented.
Can somebody shut down the mic?
I believe Mr. Knowles' motion adequately reflects what I suggested, what Mr. Gann said, and reflects the action that the township is taking. So I think you're covered by saying you're declining and you're accepting the recommendation of the township engineer.
You all right with that?
I'm
sir?
okay. Is there a
Do we
second?
have a second on the motion? Mr. Sloan, any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions, ayes have it, 5-0. Number 11, Somerton Valley, consideration of escrow release is going to be the same as the last one. Somerton Valley Homes LP Phase 2, release number 19, Carter Road and Somerton Road, 2-6-1, 2-7-2. Mr. Gans, that's the same with?
This is exactly the same. The only difference is the amount they asked for was $1,011. But in all other respects, it's exactly like the last one.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion based on the recommendation that we do not release the escrow.
There you go.
Do we have a second on the motion?
I'll second that motion.
Wait, you're voting to not release zero?
Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Ayes have it. 5-0. All right, number 12 on the agenda, public comment.
Melanie Goldstein, 4419 East Yates Road, Bensalem, Pennsylvania 19020. Did you need, is that it? Okay. My initial reaction upon hearing the news that Bensalem would not be pursuing 287G was to stand up, shower the mayor with accolades, and thank him for his statement regarding 287G. However, after recalling the journey traveled to this point, while I am thrilled that Bensalem will not be pursuing 287G, I realize much damage has been done by the mayor's failure to expeditiously handle this matter. When posed with the question as to his position regarding the township's participation in the 287G program, the mayor did not offer a definitive answer when he was first asked about this. It took months of concerned citizens, organizing, and community activists meeting and planning to get the much desired and correct response, the only humanly acceptable response, that Bensalem would not be pursuing 287G. And during the waiting time, when responses were not received and stalling tactics were employed, families within our communities suffered by living in fear of deportation. And worse yet, their children, many of whom are citizens, lived with the insecurity that their families would be ripped apart. Trust between the community and our wonderful police was further eroded. And in the end, when the long-awaited statement was finally released, it turns out it was written for the mayor, not by the mayor. When the mayor did speak out, he never actually denounced 287 as being wrong or discriminatory. He did, however, accuse those who worked to ensure that Bensalem not participate in 287G as making it political. Since when are human rights political? So I have come here not to thank the mayor, but to thank those responsible for bringing Bensalem onto the correct side of this issue, and in doing so, making Bensalem a model for other communities, countywide, statewide, and countrywide. Thank you to those of my neighbors who band together to protect and be the voice of those who live in the shadows, too untrusting and fearful to speak for themselves. Thank you to those members of the advocacy groups who weighed in and watchdogged these issues so that all members of Bensalem can enjoy the rights provided by our great Constitution. But the job of these caring citizens is not done. Now they must convince our immigrant friends that they will continue to be vigilant and make sure 287G is not quietly revisited at some future date when the dust settles. And they will have to make sure our mayor stands by his word. Let's keep Bensalem on the map as a community that really welcomes all people, regardless of their country of origin. Let's make sure residents of our community are measured by their worth, not by the status of their paperwork. Thank you.
Thank you.
Frank Goldstein, 4419 East Yates Road, Bensalem. Gentlemen, I had the opportunity to speak to this council several weeks ago. Mr. Mayor, you were absent at that time looking after your wife. I hope all's well now. At that time, I carefully constructed my remarks, which were focused against this township adopting an agreement with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. I gave my remarks a great deal of thought, based primarily on my life as a child of the Holocaust. The purpose of my remarks was to share that at times in our human history, evil things start small, and from time to time, like a small fire, turn into a raging blaze. This was my fear with regard to 287G. My remarks were taken wrong by a number of you and some others in the room. I was not accusing anyone here of being a Nazi. That would be a wrong perspective and wrong for me to even suggest that, especially as a first-generation American of German Jewish refugee parents welcomed into this great country. In the beginning of my remarks, I complimented the Bensalem Police Department and our Bensalem Public Safety Director on his management of said department. I did this again as I closed my remarks. There's plenty of reason for our police to continue the hard work they are doing to keep us safe. Over 25 years ago, I founded the Bucks County Heroes Scholarship Fund to make sure our first responders had the benefit for their children to continue their education beyond high school. We now have that benefit in Bucks County. However, my heart will never stop missing a beat when a siren goes by or there's a story in the media of an injured cop. I would like to believe that there isn't a stronger civilian supporter of our police, fire officers, and all law enforcement and first responders than me here in Bucks County. I have put my money and my time where my mouth is for the Heroes Fund, which is approaching $1 million in assets, and unfortunately 6 eligible children of lost heroes. As many of you know, I also work with the homeless and serve on the Lower Bucks Addiction Task Force with Director Haran. And in that regard, I am trying to mentor a recovering heroin addict who, believe it or not, has a master's degree and while in jail wrote a book. Her name is Sarah, and I would like to close by reading part of the dedication of her book. With her permission, I might add. I could not complete a memoir without honoring the men who personally placed me on the path to recovery. Therefore, this book is dedicated to the task force team of the Bensalem Police Department, whose combined efforts provided the catalyzing force which ended a devastating act of addiction and reopened the gateway to freedom. The results of your commitment have proven worthwhile in the rebuilding of my life. Thank you very much.
Alan Windsor, 3232 Azalea Avenue. I was very fortunate again last Monday to go on the Bucks County Tour of Honors to Washington, D.C. I'm asking every Vietnam veteran that's out there to try and get on these buses. I knew what to expect this time because I was on the first one. And the surprise that these gentlemen had of the welcome that they're actually now receiving from the citizens. If you could see the faces of these guys, it was really, really something that blew my mind because I didn't really see it the first time because it was new to me. Okay, there was police officers blocking off entrances to 95 so that our buses could just breeze right through, standing at attention, saluting us, along with a bunch of citizens. the fire trucks with their flags, the ladder trucks with the flags over the bridges. It was very humbling. More the second time than the first. I understand a lot of these guys have a lot of pain because their friends are on that wall. But the time that you will spend with these guys, these other veterans who went through the similar things, and the way these gentlemen talk to each other, I mean, I've never talked to anybody like I did to them. You just wouldn't understand unless you were there. I wish that they keep doing this for hopefully the guys coming home from Iraq and Afghanistan in the future. It's just something that it's hard to explain, but the gratification for the guys is just unbelievable. So thank you for the mayor. He came down on it with us this time, and it was very humbling to watch the guys. Get on the bus next time. Unbelievable. All right, thank you.
Do we have any other public comment? Seeing nobody else coming forward, I'll close public comment.
May I respond? I have to say, my mother and father are rolling over in their grave tonight. I don't know, I put in that press release to not make this political. I beg not to make it political. We had many, many, many more people in this community call, email about me going against that. I made a decision what I thought is right for the community. There are people here that we're dividing a community. Let it go. We're doing what's right for the community. Don't keep coming up here and making more problems that these people tomorrow call and say, you see, Mr. Mayor, you see what you did? We believe in 278G. You have a divided community. We have a divided country. Let it go. Let it go. When we do the right thing and we do the thing for our community, I don't care what you think of me, either one of you. I don't care. But don't take it out on our community to keep it up and split this community on and on and on. Because next week you'll have people coming up here, Mr. Mayor, how could you go against 287G? All those people that came out to that meeting, they weren't even from Bensalem, Mr. Mayor. They were from other communities. They came in here to do it. What is wrong when someone makes a decision that we have to keep carrying on? And Frank, you can go on and keep it up. I'm just telling you, give it up. Go for the community. Keep this community together. We don't need to keep coming up to a microphone politically to split this community. It's not good for anybody. We made a decision, the right decision for this community. Whether you don't believe the mayor or whatever, the council, whoever it is, let's do it as a team, as people in this community coming together and not splitting. Just continue to split it. And both of you know my parents came from another country. They came with rags and worked their way up to raise a family, and to hear that their son tonight is being accused of this craziness. It's not right. I gave 28 years, 30 years, volunteered this community, gave it up. Frank, you were there when I started. To make a community, not to split a community. I'm sorry, Mr. President.
Public comment's closed, so there's no good to be any back and forth. Your comment, he had it, we're done. Okay, other business when supporting personnel. Mr. Gans. Mr. Mayor.
I just want to say with the non-veterans, and yeah, I had a nephew on the wall. I finally found it. It was down there before. I could never find it. His name was so difficult, but we found it this time and brought his thing home to the family. And those veterans coming back is just incredible. It's just, I don't know. Joe Saffron has done one unbelievable job. unbelievable. Kudos to Joe and all the volunteers working with him, because he does have a team working with him to make that gel. So it was a great day, an incredible day. And I hope in the fall they're having it again, and hopefully next summer again for Vietnam and Iraq. Hopefully just continue to give them the honor that they deserve. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Pizzo?
The only thing I would say, as a resident of this community, as well as having had the pleasure of representing this community for a long, long time, this is a model community. That's the one thing I heard tonight that I certainly agree with. This is a model community and has been for a long, long time, for a great number of reasons that far exceed one question of one agreement regarding one aspect of law enforcement that's been discussed over the last few months. This is a wonderful community. I had the opportunity to sit here and speak at length as to the lengths that this township took in regard to litigation that was brought against it, in regard to the accusation that people's rights were being challenged, were not being honored. And this community, it is impressive, and you should all be proud as a group of elected officials charged with the task of governing this community for all that you do for every member of this community, irrespective of their race, their religion, their economic status. And it makes me proud to be a resident of this township. Thank you.
Mr. Sloan?
Mr. Mayor, I'm a little concerned with all these comments about 287G coming up again, because the press release came out and I was, I thought this was over and done with. And aside from the comments tonight, are you aware that your public safety director made comments last week about 287G at the school board meeting?
I didn't see it. I knew he was there. I thought he was there also about police officer or so.
I believe that was the main reason why he went, but why is the public safety director making comments, whether it's clarifying or not? If we're dropping this program and not doing anything about it, why are we still talking about it? And it goes back not just last week, but there was a news article right after the press release came out where literally the title said that Bensalem Mayor and Public Safety Director send mixed messages. So I want to know, which is it? Is it like you say, and like you were quoted in that press release, that we're not pursuing it? Or is it like Director Horan is out there publicizing?
Jesse, I had
that
told
this is still
Mr.
an issue?
Horan that not to talk about it, that it was dead. I talked to you before about that.
That's why I'm asking.
Absolutely, and I will address that again. I didn't know that that was brought up. I didn't watch the meeting, so I'll look at it and find out what was said.
Okay, I appreciate that, because I think it's bringing up
I
these
want it
fears
gone.
all over
I want it
again.
gone out of our vocabulary here. I want to run a place for a solid community.
I
don't want to
appreciate that.
split it. And darn it, they know it in their hearts that we don't want to split this community. But I'll address
I agree
it.
with you. I don't think
I'll
anybody
address
wants
that.
to. Thank you. And then one other thing, I understand the press release came out. I don't know about the rest of council. I was not informed beforehand. Is there going to be a time when council is informed by the administration of news events before we read about it in a headline? It goes back before 287G, or when this first came up last November, even last month when there was an oil spill in the township and we had the Department of the Environment from the state coming to clean things up, Coast Guard involvement. Why doesn't council get notified? Why do we have to read about it in a headline in a newspaper?
I don't know. We'll make sure he get notified. I mean,
Appreciate that.
Mr. Sloan, understand that the press release that you're speaking to, the one that the residents spoke to, was not a press release prepared by the township or issued by the township.
I'm aware of
It was a
that.
press release issued by a third-party group that came, met with the mayor, said, can we issue a press release representing what this meeting was?
Sure.
And the mayor said, certainly.
I think in those kinds of instances, I think it would benefit all of us to at least have some kind of heads up that there's a press release coming out for the township. We are the governing body of this township. We should be informed before it's made notice to the public, I think.
Certainly. But I don't, and that's certainly a fair point.
That's all I'm saying.
I don't believe the administration has issued any such press releases up to this point, but it's certainly something we can coordinate with the council president to make sure, and that's what we attempt to do currently. The administration attempts to, as has been done for as long as I've been around. Information flows to council through the council president, whoever he or she may be at any given time.
Okay. Then I'd request Mr. Polari to make sure that we're all informed of these matters.
I'll make sure it's
And I'm not suggesting that Mr. Polari had information that he didn't share. I'm saying that that's
on the same boat you are.
That's, I figured as much, and that's why I'm raising the issue.
right. I didn't mean to create that impression, but that's the way we will continue to do things in the future.
That was that important.
I did have one other issue to follow up from a question at the last meeting about using the projector for presentations when developers come in. I did contact your office. I just want to inform the public. I was told June 1st that everything will be in working order. I just want to check with you and confirm that we're still working on that.
Done.
Okay, so June 1st, we should be able to use the projector so that the audience can see what's going on. So the only other thing I had is I believe our next meeting is after Memorial Day. So everybody have a very safe holiday, and remember that this is a holiday that we're honoring those that we've lost in their service to this country.
Thank you. I had 3 items. The first thing is I just wanted to refer back to the school board meeting that Jesse had referred to as far as Director Rand being there. I was just wondering, Mayor, if you could just provide us a little bit more information as far as the idea of hiring an additional school resource officer. I believe he was there to pitch an idea of having another officer. Again, to go back to Jesse's point about the fact that if this is something that's going to be a township cost, I would hope to see that in front of us as well. So I was hoping maybe you could provide some information on
Well,
that.
it wasn't going to be a township cost.
But from what I understood, it was going to, well, at some point, the school board was going to fund that cost, and then it was going to be reimbursed by the township,
So who? Reimburse who?
the school district.
No. Not
Can-
true.
The school district reimburse us for any monies.
Yeah, yeah, not the
Well,
other way.
I was
around.
told that was only for the first 3 years, and then the township covers the cost after that.
We have a resource officer there already.
Right.
We do.
They pay for that.
That comes from the school district's budget, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
And that's what we're asking them to do again, for another resource.
to increase that. Okay. Why, whose idea was that? Was that a request from the school
Well,
board?
with everything that you hear that's going on, we
Oh,
feel,
no,
as-
I'm
for the
just wondering-
safety, we feel as though the police department feels as though they could use another resource officer there
Okay,
to protect the kids
okay.
and make sure that we're getting everything done the right way. So that would be something that they would have to put in their budget.
Okay.
Is this in the high school, or is this in several other schools?
No,
I
we
believe
have-
it's going to be in the middle schools.
Middle schools, and they would rotate from one,
Is that what they're, yeah.
you know.
That doesn't make sense.
The high school already has one.
I know.
Do you have anything else, Mr.?
I do, yes. The second piece is, Mayor, I had brought up the topic about the budget. I believe there's an audit that's going on now or maybe finished. I was hoping,
I think John was in touch with that, at least he told me.
I mean, I emailed him and he said they were still in the process of
Okay.
the audit, but I was hoping to obtain a quarterly copy. I'll give you an example. I think we budgeted $400,000 for snow removal, so I just wanted to get an idea as far as where we
I'll tell
landed, where
John
we're at. Okay. And then, just on a personal note, I just wanted to, to wish a number of Bensalem students luck. They are off to Penn State for PJAS competition next week. So I wish them a lot of luck in their success in providing those presentations and so forth and some of their projects, Pennsylvania Junior Academy of Science. And then the other thing is Happy Memorial Day, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Knowles?
Yeah, I would just like to say that, on a positive note, I'm very proud of our diversity in our community. I read that we have we're ranked 4th in the state for our diversity in our high school. We have Unity Week with the different faiths that we visit. We have the program, and the work established in the beginning of this community by Mother Catherine Drexel and her work in the minority communities. So I'm very proud of that. I'm glad this 287G thing is over. It started out from my research that President Clinton is the one that started it in the first place, and I don't know why he would have started an inhumane program, but he did. And a lot of the abuses happened in the Southwest, but I don't think they would have happened here, but I'm glad it's not going to happen, so people can rest. I'm happy with the diversity in our community. I'm happy with our police, and I hope the school board does whatever the public safety director recommends so our children are safe. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Kisselbeck.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to keep it positive also. Wish everyone a happy Memorial Day. Keep in mind that these men and women are giving their life so we have the opportunity of having liberties that we do, giving us the opportunity to be here this evening to voice our opinions, positive or negative, and that's an important part of the aspect. That being said, the high school is having a dedication to all those graduates of Bensalem High School that served in the military, and that's going to be this Saturday from 11 o'clock to about 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock.
Yeah, I think the ceremony is at 12. Thanks for mentioning
So
that.
at 12 o'clock, so that should be something if you have an opportunity to get over to see. And there's going to be a wall with the names of those who were graduated from Bensalem, who are either currently in the service or released, honorably discharged, serving our country. Okay? So that's something I just wanted to mention on that. And that's all I want to say, Joe. Thank you.
Ed, 1 second. Ed, thanks for mentioning that, because Ray Gwynn in my office is the alumni president. He's done a lot of work with that, and I've been trying to help him a little bit. But also, just to mention about the Vietnam vets, a lot of Bensalem students left high school and didn't graduate and went into the Vietnam War, and their names are also going to be on the, as long as they attended the high school, their names are being submitted to be on the wall.
Good stuff. I just want to wish everybody a happy Memorial Day. Stay safe. Have fun with your families. Next meeting will be May 29th. I have a motion to adjourn.
Make the motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right.